you all for being here for this very important conversation. It's something that's at the forefront of many people's minds, the digital divide in New Mexico, especially these days. It's been, of course, an issue before COVID-19 hit our state and made internet access so important, but since we've been experiencing this pandemic, it's become even more evident how it affects people here in New Mexico. So we're very grateful tonight to have some wonderful people to help us understand the impact here on the ground with the digital divide, what impact it has on the residents of New Mexico. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Manny to also do a welcome. Manny, our first vice chair, we're very grateful to have Manny here in service for the Bernalillo County Democratic Party. So Manny.
Thank you all for being here. And as you know, technology, especially in times like this, you know, it's a really, really important thing to have. We are having this program to close the digital divide because, you know, as we all know, that the evolution of technology, especially here in New Mexico, you know, has been growing very quickly, but in some areas, you know, we do have to close that digital divide. Digital inclusion strategies must evolve as the technologies develop and change, and New Mexico is in the forefront of this because of our leaders. While making sure that everyone has access to technology, the internet, and digital literacy training as a critical component, the tools are essential in closing the digital divide in New Mexico. To succeed in closing the digital divide, policymakers need to reconsider how broadband subsidies are deployed before money can be wisely spent, and to know how and who we can serve, because there are a lot of people out there in New Mexico that are underserved and who can't afford even the $10 it takes to you know, have broadband or any kind of internet in their home. So thank you all for being here for this important cause, and we look forward to working towards closing that digital divide for New Mexico. And thank you for being here again.
Thank you very much, Manny. One of the things that well, first some housekeeping items, just to let you all know, your attendees, the chat is a good way for you to ask questions, put your questions in there. You can find that if you hover over the bottom of your window, you'll see some icons come up, the chat, hit the chat there, and you'll be able to participate that way. And there's also a Q&A function that you can use. The Q&A allows you to ask questions, and then the panelists can answer them directly. And the way that the program tonight is going to work, we're going to have a presentation by Elizabeth Serna, a counselor from West Mesa High School. We're then going to have the our panelists. We're going to do introductions and then have our discussion on this topic. And we'll be taking questions from you. We'll have them start off with their introductions, and then we'll go into questions from the audience. But I would like to, at this point, start out with a little, I'm going to share a document here with you. Do you all see my screen here? I'm hoping you do. This is a COVID-19 tracking document, and this is what we are seeing right now, the highest rates of COVID-19 by zip code in the state. As you'll see here, several of these are in Albuquerque, and 4 of them are on the west side of Albuquerque. And so we all know that COVID-19 is transmitted person to person. And as much as it pains us to have this experience of not being able to be around our loved ones in person, we need to be careful that we're not spreading something to them that we don't want them to have. We want to make sure that we're not endangering their lives. So please be careful. Let's shelter in place. I know it's a difficult thing, but 2020 is going to be gone pretty soon. And we're going to be turning this corner, and hopefully in a short period of time, we'll be able to regain some of our normalcy with our loved ones not infected. So please, please be careful, be mindful of this time, and any of you who have lost loved ones or who are have loved ones who are suffering, or if you're suffering for it, our hearts go out to you, and we keep you in our prayers, and we send you our love, and we really do care about what's happening in our community right now. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Elizabeth Cerna, and Elizabeth is a counselor at West Mesa High School, and she's going to tell us about a program that they have going on, not just in West Mesa High School, but something that has to do with the digital divide in Albuquerque. Elizabeth?
Hi, thank you. So my name is Elizabeth Cerna, as Flora just said. Flora's my mom. I'm sorry, guys. It's really hard for me to call her Flora. Anyways, and I'm going to talk to you guys about Project Connect. So this project is a fundraiser that I launched with the school at West Mesa High School, but it also includes the 10 schools, so the 9 feeder schools as well to West Mesa High School. And I'm hoping if this is successful, it will be implemented in other schools as well. But let me tell you about Project Connect. So we want to break down internet disparity for all our students. And I don't know if you guys know that in March we went all online, APS went all online, and this left many schools rushing to provide electronic devices and internet to our students. We did a really good job at APS with providing electronic devices with our students. It took many months, but we got it done. But there still has been an issue with internet that is not as easy, it's not an easy task. So we did a survey, and 243 of 400 students that took the survey stated that they had issues with connecting with internet, which is kind of amazing that they were able to take the survey because it was online. So it's really difficult for our students. It just shows the barriers that we have for our students have. And this has started to affect our students and their academics. So in October of last year, 1,568 students there was 1,568 Fs last year. This year, there's 4,301 Fs the same time in October of last year compared to this October of this year. We can't say this is the only reason, but we can definitely say that we did a call-a-thon last week, and there was a majority of these students did still have issues with internet, and there's only 5 weeks left in the semester. Actually less than 5, like 4 weeks left in the semester. So many of our families have a hard time keeping a roof over their head. We are a Title I school, and we also have a good Title I homeless program, which Shannon runs. And she can tell you more about the students. I don't know if she's going to tell you more about them, but with our students, we had over 150 homeless students within our population. And that's like almost 20% of APS. So one of the ways that we go around this is that so they can get $9.95 per month they all qualify for Internet Essentials. And so we're hoping that we can support a family of students for $60. That's up until the end of the semester. So we're asking for donations of $60 or $10 a month in order to help these families. And now we've actually been really successful so far, and we're hoping to keep that momentum going because we didn't have any way of supporting them before. Whenever there was a family that called because they give 2 months for free and they're like, they're going to cut my service off, we had no way of helping them up until this point. So now I'm really excited that we're going to have something to offer our families and our students. And I'm going to put, or I don't know if me or my mom are going to put the link if you guys want to share the Project Connect handout. It's going to be in the chat, and you guys are welcome to share that with whomever, or if you want to contact me to donate, that would be great too.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Appreciate that. Appreciate all you're doing. All right. Well, and now, and her phone number is on that handout. The handout, link to the handout is in the chat, and you can contact her email or phone, and she'll be able to answer your questions. So at this time, I'd like to have Manny do introductions. Manny.
Thank you for being here, everybody, and we really appreciate all the attendance, but we also wanted to say a special shout out to our leaders that are here to help us to, run this seminar for the digital divide. And I just wanted to introduce our newly elected County Commissioner, Adriana Barboa. Hi, Adriana, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for I appreciate the honor of being here, being able to talk to our folks. And I don't know if I'm supposed to do an introduction now, but I am I officially take office in January. Was I supposed to do an introduction here? Yes. Okay. Just to make sure I'm not stealing time. But so I officially take office in January. I'm very thankful for the support from community and excited to serve. I am also today, I think I've been asked to be on this panel because of the work I've done in my day job as the policy director for Forward Together Action, a program, Strong Families New Mexico, that I started here in Albuquerque 8 years ago, and I've been running. And we have worked extensively with communities across the state and in collaboration with Senator Michael Padilla to advocate, because it came up as needs with the communities we're working on, to have broadband access, to address the digital divide and its consequences for folks across our state. So I will take the privilege of both being very Bernalillo County centered for this call, but also to bring in the issues that I've had privilege to hear from folks across our state about the access to internet and what it causes for families. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here again. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to all the work that you'll do in the district. And just thank you again for being here and for stepping up to learn all this important work before you actually step into the role. It's greatly appreciated. And next, I would like to introduce our senator from New Mexico Senate, representing District 14 since January 15th, 2013. Senator Michael Padilla was the Senate Majority Whip from his second year in office until being stripped from that. And now he serves proudly as not only for New Mexicans, but also as a leader for the legislature and pushing forward to close the digital divide. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Senator Michael Padilla.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chairman and Madam Chair and Shannon and Ivan. And I want to give a special congratulations to Commissioner-elect Barboa. She was very modest when she spoke of her work in the legislature. She really does help to keep a lot of the legislature focused on the very important issues facing real families. I'm in my kitchen right now, and it's the kitchen table issues that Commissioner-elect Barboa truly helps to bring focus to in the legislature. You heard a little bit about me. I represent about 90% of the Southwest quadrant of Bernalillo County. Been in the legislature for 8 years. I did serve 2 terms as the whip in the Senate, which is the running around whipping those little senators into shape and keep carrying our legislative agenda for the Democratic Party, as well as killing things that are bad for New Mexico and bad for our people. And then I've also been chairman of the Science, Technology, and Telecommunications Committee for either chairman or vice chairman for the past 8 years. We flip it back and forth between the House and the Senate. So I've been chair for 4 years and vice chair for 4 years. And I thoroughly enjoy that work because in a lot of ways, that's what brings economic development and job creation, distance learning, and telehealth to all of our communities, not just in the rural areas, but also some communities have never had a healthcare professional in their community. And this helps to bring some healthcare to their communities up to a certain point, and then you have to come in and see a doctor and see someone in person. From a distance learning standpoint, it's straight hitting us right in the face right now. We are woefully underprepared for that right now, and I'll talk about maybe, Mr. Vice Chairman, I'll talk a little bit about some of the data around what's happening in New Mexico here in a little bit. And then, if you can get into Harvard Online, which a lot of people do in our rural communities because they're so focused on their education and seeing that education is our path to prosperity, You can go to Harvard online. You can go to Harvard if you can bring broadband to a community. And I want to make that available to not just Harvard, but UNM and New Mexico State and Pomona State and UCLA and you name it, University of Florida. I want to make that available to every New Mexico child. And then, you know, from an economic development job creation standpoint, we are woefully behind in some of our communities being able to turn their economies around. You may have heard the term economic based job. An economic based job are dollars that come in to pay an individual to do a type of work where the money isn't just being recirculated or refloated in their communities. It's money coming from the other side of the planet, the other side of the country, you know, another state in the US. And that's what truly expands our economies and helps our families. And I can talk for hours. I've had a lot of very successful legislation that I feel very good about. And I want to just say that I've been a Democrat my entire life. I grew up in extreme poverty. My sisters and I here in New Mexico, and it was the Democratic Party that raised us. And so whenever we had an opportunity to give back to our community, that's exactly what you see me doing here. So thank you for having me this evening. And I want to thank the participants and the folks that are attending the meeting, but we can't see you, and just say to you that I've been right there in your shoes, and the work that you're doing across, you know, the county as part of this effort made everything happen in this election. And I just want to personally say thank you to you.
So thank you so much, Senator Padilla, for being here. And thank you again, County Commissioner Barboa. Now I'm going to turn it over to Flora, and we're going to start our program to questions and start our discussion.
But first, let's have Shannon introduce herself. Shannon,
Oh, I'm sorry, Shannon. I am so sorry, Shannon. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Shannon.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you guys so much for having me tonight. I am in my 24th year of education, 22 in APS with the Title I McKinney-Vento program. And I specifically work with the West Mesa cluster and all the schools that feed into it, and with students and families that have been identified as being or living in a homeless situation. We work under a federal definition of homelessness that is different from the HUD definition. So the HUD definition is, you know, the folks you see in the tent cities, the folks on the street corners. The McKinney-Vento definition, which is what we work under, encompasses a lot more. So we are able to reach a lot more families that are in vulnerable situations. You know, it's families that are doubled up. It's families that are living in motels, paying on their own. It's families that have been displaced due to an eviction or a divorce and are living with grandma in a 2-bedroom apartment. It's unaccompanied youth who are couch surfing from place to place every couple days. So those are the families that I work with on a daily basis. And I'm glad to be here to kind of be the voice for what they're experiencing right now. So thank you guys for having me.
Shannon. Thank you again, Shannon, for being here, and my apologies for that introduction. I also wanted to not forget anybody, and I also wanted to send a special shout out to Ivan for putting on this meeting for us, and just for broadcasting it and making sure that we had the technology to make this happen. So again, thank you, Ivan.
Yes, Ivan Pfeiffer, our wonderful tech guru. So I'd like to have each of you give us you gave us some background about yourself, but tell us a little bit more about the digital divide and your work, what you see in how you see it and how it crosses paths with your work. So Adrienne, would you like to start off?
Yes, thank you so much. And I thank you, Laura and Manny, and great comments, Miss Elizabeth Sarna. I think you really hit it on the nail, right? When we're talking about both that folks can't afford oftentimes internet access, but there's also pieces of the digital divide that include just people that can't, where they're at a lack of infrastructure. And I think that's, as we look at places like the West Side, as we, Tom Sharman, he sent me this map that I've been trying to play with. I'll put it in the link because I don't want to, I was going to try and share it tonight, but I'm still playing with it to try and understand it fully. But right, when we think about the areas, I've also heard several, sorry, I'm going a little crazy, but I want to make sure I include everything. So I've heard Councillor Lansana, and I've heard Commissioner Stephen Michael Quesada, both talk about how COVID's been hit on the west side in Albuquerque particularly hard. Quesada often talks about, Commissioner Quesada often talks about how it relates to the number of essential workers and folks that are doing some of the on the ground essential work, and that's a lot of that population. Councilor Lancena also had a conversation with her this week about how those households are often households where a lot of households are often, on average, are 4 people in the household, where the average for folks living on the west side is 7 people. So we think about what it means when one person gets contact. Or I hear all the time now when you're on Zoom or in all the different meetings that I have to be on, people saying, you know, professionals that I'm in meetings with saying, oh, my kids are in another room taking up all the broadband, right? So what does that mean when we think about true disparities or meeting the needs of our communities? We have to extra emphasize the fact that folks that are living in a larger household that have 7 people in it, and if 7 people are using that internet access compared to 4 people using that internet access. So for too many incidences of disparities, it falls on the backs of low-income families, off the backs of people of color, indigenous communities that bear the brunt of these. And it takes something like a COVID, right, like a global pandemic, to really show how disparate those disparities are. Because now everybody's dealing with it, even affluent households are having to deal with the difference between broadband access. But what does that mean then off the backs of those who weren't able to afford it before a pandemic, who didn't have the infrastructure in their communities, because their communities, as others have mentioned, have long time been underserved. I won't take too much more time, but like I said in my bit of an introduction, was that Strong Families New Mexico, program of 4 Together, has been supporting bills that I would say I've only seen Senator Michael Padilla being brave enough to do in a time when nobody wanted to fund it. And had I think about the last 6 years that I myself have been working with him, and we've been, because it came from a need of our communities, that we're saying we can't even apply for a McDonald's job without internet access. And in some communities, I know I want to speak specifically to Bernalillo County, but I also want to raise the awareness that we work in McKinley County, Doña Ana, and Rio Arriba counties. And in those communities, folks are saying, you know, but I don't have a laptop, I don't have internet access, and there's not even internet infrastructure. Even if I had all the money in the world to pay for it, it does not exist for me. And so to get our world is continually making it so that we only can get doctor's appointments, apply for jobs, apply for school, get our homework. Parents need to even to check their students, whether their kids are succeeding in school, is also all based off the internet, right? And when that means that, then they're saying like, yeah, even if I have a laptop, I still have to go drive and park in the library parking lot so I can access internet. I want that to be really clear, and I say this statistic a lot, that 70% of our state does not have access to reliable internet. I'll say it again, 70% of our state does not have access to reliable internet. And when all of us are dependent on it, and the world increasingly depends on it to access some of our very basic needs and services, that becomes a bigger problem. And I'll say we've been working with, and you can find our report card at Strong Families New Mexico. We do a thorough report card of the state legislature every 2 years. And we've covered those broadband access bills sponsored by Senator Michael Padilla for the last at least 4 of them. And, you know, every time that we're in those committees, folks have not wanted to put the effort forward to put the resources necessary. And I actually want to be hopeful that this time that COVID has exposed and that everybody's feeling it will, you know, force the hand of our decision makers to say, this is something that we need to prioritize, and the relief that it could mean because of some of the things we've already mentioned around telehealth, around being able to access services, around being able to answer a survey that can improve your access to education. So I won't keep talking. I just want thank you for the time today, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you so much, Adrienne. Yeah, the work you do is amazing, and we sure appreciate all of it. Shannon, tell us about what you do with your community, your work.
So ideally, and first and foremost, our first responsibility is to make sure kids are allowed to go to school. Meaning some of our families don't have the documents, they don't have birth certificates, and they're initially weren't allowed to attend, which is why the law came into place in 1987. What we're seeing right now is we took away the level playing field of campus. You know, kids used to be able to go to campus and they were in the same classroom with the same teacher, with the same technology, with the same books. We took that away when we went to distance learning. And we are seeing that the families that I work with they're falling off the radar. And it's not just an urban issue or a rural issue, it's both. Today I was at a hotel in Midtown Albuquerque, and families are unable to connect at the motel. Comcast was there trying to fix it. Kids hadn't been on school for 2 or 3 days. There was a family there whose kindergartner has not yet started. I have in the 20s of kids, kindergartners, who haven't yet started or enrolled this school year. A lot of the families I work with are out in Tehajali, and I've taken a number of hotspots out for them to connect, but even the hotspots aren't strong enough. And a grandma with 4 kids will have the kids in the car with their books, with their computers, driving to find connection. And she'll ping me in the car, and I'll go out and meet her and see what we can do to try to get things connected. Families out in the East Mountains don't have, just strong enough connections. I know Comcast did a great thing with the Internet Essentials and the $10 a month, but a lot of times our families that are so mobile cannot access that. You have to have not had a past due balance with Comcast. You had to not be a current customer with Comcast. And I know a lot of that are kinks that have been worked out, but it's still hard for our families to get on the phone and get access turned on in a home. And then, like Adrienne was saying, families when there are 6 kids on trying to access at the same time, the bandwidth is just not strong enough to have all kids on at once attending. So a lot of my high school kids will just kind of log on late at night. So they're missing the lecture and they're missing the time with the teacher, but they're trying to at least get the homework done and the classwork done. So it's just the quality of internet, basic is just not quite enough for what we need right now. And the have versus the have-nots, that's something that is just growing at this point in time. And I don't know, but that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of that right now, is just kids not being able to access.
Yeah, and so many of us can only imagine what that's like, and for you to actually be in the spaces where it's happening. Thank you for giving us that insight.
Yeah.
It just has to be extremely difficult. Senator Padilla, you've been exploring this for years. And as I read up on this, I saw a lot of the technical aspects of it, as well as the things that Shannon and Adrienne were talking about. And I'm wondering if you could give us a little bit of background as far as the state of broadband and what we're seeing, why we're seeing what we're seeing as far as these the lack of broadband in other spaces.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And you heard very good stories just now of how this directly, squarely affects the youth in our state, from classroom to working families to you name it. I also want to add that what's happening in the middle of the day is affecting commerce in our state now too. It's affecting healthcare, being able to transmit information, very important information. That's also being affected in our state. So, but I'm a person of action. I don't like to just complain. I don't like to just talk about things. I like to try my level best to get something done and to act on it. And so what I would say is just going to give you a little more color to some of the data that you just heard a little while ago. So as it turns out, we actually have 81 to, depending on what you're looking at, and I saw a comment, by the way, and I thought was fantastic in the chat or in the Q&A box, about 81 to 87% of the state actually does have broadband, does have internet, but not all internet is the same. Of the 81%, about 69% is under the federal standards for broadband access. Upload, download speeds, and that's a very important piece that we measure there. I'm going to talk, if I can, Madam Chair, just about some legislation from the past, and then legislation that I'm going to be bringing forward into the next session, actually. So in 2017, I was the chair of the Science, Technology, and Telecommunications Committee that year again, and so I made it the year of broadband. We had 77 bills introduced that year. I think Adrienne probably remembers. Adrienne, excuse me. We had about 17 of them get serious consideration, make it all the way to their chambers, the House floor, the Senate floor. We had 11 bills that were passed that year. I had 3 of them. The first one was related to placing broadband in the Local Infrastructure Act. And I know that we want to talk about kind of what are we going to do here, but I think it's also important to understand kind of what has happened so far. And it's going to be, these are launching pads to other major things that we're going to be doing. So as it turns out, I was the Senate Majority Whip at the time, and we had just overridden the governor's veto, veto on an education initiative that we worked with the Republicans on, surprisingly, to override her veto. It was only the 4th time in state history where we overrode a governor. So she marched right into work that day and vetoed 10 bills. Boom, 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 boom. The very first one that was vetoed was the Senate Majority Whip's bill on putting broadband in the Local Infrastructure Act. So please don't ever let anyone tell you that Republicans are the only ones that know how to create jobs. I was appalled. She could have actually vetoed another bill of mine, which I would have actually been like, okay, whatever, we'll get that one next year. So I took her to court 3 times. I don't know if you heard about this. It was a really nasty, ugly battle that year. And she finally gave up, and we were able to put broadband in the Local Infrastructure Act. I didn't know before I came to the legislature exactly what infrastructure was, but to me, broadband is a water line, a sidewalk, a road, a swimming pool, a library, a park, an exit off the freeway, a new sewer system, a new water system. Broadband is just like those things in our society now. So I was so glad we're able to put that as a law. Then the second thing that year, the second bill that I had was reforming the USF fund. We all pay this little fee on our bills, and we're always kind of upset, like, what the heck is all that? What does that mean? Why do they take that money? Well, that is a small fee that gets collected, placed into a larger pot of money for the state, and it's called the Universal Service Fund. Would you believe that that fund would grow in some years up to $16 to $18 million a year, but it would be reinvested in what are called POTS lines. POTS lines are plain old telephone system lines, which is basically a dying technology. So 80–90% of that money would be placed there. So I thought, why don't we reform that, flip the script on that, and let the fund grow to $30 million a year, because the state had grown so much since it had been created, the USF fund. Let the fund grow to $30 million. The first $6 million that comes out of the fund can only go to new technologies, i.e. broadband internet, or 80% of the money that comes out of the fund, of the $30 million, has to go to broadband only. So that's item number 2 that was accomplished that year, and the governor did sign that bill, the previous governor. The third bill that I was able to accomplish that year, I had the bill for 3 straight years, and I never give up once I want to do something. I'm real shy, as many of you know. So so we just kept working at it. And I don't know if you remember when you were a kid, you had one, or maybe your brother had one, but you stand on a piece of wood, and there was a little pole here, and you would punch the thing, and it would come right back at you, so you could kind of box with it or whatever. I felt like I was standing next to that for 3 straight years, just getting pounded and pummeled on this thing. Would you believe that we had not rewritten our telecommunication laws in New Mexico since before the internet came along? That bill rewrote every single telecommunications law, making New Mexico a much more attractive state for investment. We are a very small state, everybody. We have more cows per mile in New Mexico than humans, believe it or not. We are the 46th largest state with regard to population. We're the 5th largest state regarding landmass, you know, the size of our state versus others. If you put down and invest in a mile of broadband anywhere in New York State, and primarily let's just take, you know, the metro area, you know, New York, Manhattan, that area, you probably have 1 million customers inside of that mile. If you do a mile of broadband in New Mexico, you might have 46 customers inside of that mile, maybe 150 here in the metro area in our county that we represent, all of us. So it's a very expensive proposition. So now you have in your tool belt, you're down there, the mayor of Columbus, you're down there, the whoever on the South 40. Now you have the Local Infrastructure Act. You can raise money there based on the bill that I got done in 17. Now you can apply to the USF funds. So you can pull money together that way. Then you can go get a company to come in and help invest in your community and then jettison them from the investment so that you can pull and cobble together enough money to actually build a broadband network for your community. So those were the 3 big things we did in 17. Adrienne and her team were very instrumental in helping me get that done. It was a very painful experience. I'm just going to tell you, okay, so that's, I know you don't want me to talk too long, Madam Chair, but I just needed to mention that. So that's the past now. That's 2 years ago. Seems like, or 3 years ago. It seems like, you know, forever ago. So that actually in 2.5 years has actually taken us from, again, 47th in the nation with broadband access to somewhere in the mid to low 30s. But it's kind of like, you know, if you're out in the Navajo Nation right now, as an example, and someone tells you, hey, a politician stands, hey, crime is down 17%. But when your car gets stolen, or your brother gets killed, or your so-and-so, whatever, gets beat up or whatever, crime is up 100%. So I don't think that we should run around, you know, patting ourselves on the, hey, we went to the mid 30s, you know, low 30s. That's not acceptable at all. I want to be #1 in the country. So what we're going to do is, we're going to take, like other bills that I've had, the early education department that I created last year, the Hunger-Free Student Bill of Rights several years ago in 17 also, by the way. We can lead the country in this area as well. I firmly believe that. So what I'm proposing is, or did you want me to talk about what I'm proposing right now, or do you have another question? Okay, so I'll just do it real quickly. So then I thought to myself, you know, I'm a volunteer legislator. My salary is 0. If you're the mayor of Columbus or the mayor of Peña Blanca, or you're a county commissioner out there in somewhere in the state, you're getting a 0 salary essentially, except for, you know, our larger counties and stuff. And so, so I thought to myself, you know what we really need? Much like when I created the Early Childhood Education and Care Department, we need consistency across the continuum. We need to drive efficiencies. We need to adhere to the Pre-K Act. All of these things that were so hard to do to create the Early Education Department when I did that last year. So I thought, why don't we create a unified, singular Office of High-Speed Broadband Access and Expansion? So this is a piece of legislation I will be bringing forward with the intention to do really 5 critical things. So as much as we love the mayor of Columbus, and he's a great guy, I don't know if you've ever been down there, he'll read you his poetry that he's written and everything. He's a wonderful human being. He's great at building teams. He's a wonderful guy. He can paint, you know, the sky and everything. However, he probably needs some help building out a broadband network for his town. So what the legislation is going to do is 5 critical things. And there was a comment in one of the Q&A in one of the chat windows. Do we have a map? And I want to answer that right now. Actually, yes. Whoever asked that question, we have 17 maps is the problem. And none of them are the same. So this office will own the official map of broadband in New Mexico. And how does it relate to FCC standards so that we become more unified with the rest of the country to make us much more competitive? That one singular map is going to link up with monies that we can pull down from the FCC, from the USDA. Believe it or not, there's a lot of Connect America Fund money through the United States Department of Agriculture. And then it's also going to help communities, this office, to understand what's going on in their communities. That's the first thing. The second thing is bulk pricing agreements and statewide pricing agreements are going to be responsible that you can buy into with this office. Would you believe that we have school districts that pay $63 a meg to bring broadband to their schools? There's other districts that pay 13 cents. Albuquerque is actually not the one, but there's 13 cents versus $63, $65 a meg. This office will straighten that out and bring it down dramatically for everybody, because you're going to sign into a pricing agreement, you're going to sign into a bulk pricing agreement. So that's the second thing. The third thing is right-of-way access, permitting across tribal lands and sacred lands, across university and public lands, across communities, across rivers, across whatever. We need to have someone that understands how to work with the federal government and all the various agencies to get that done. So that's the third thing this office is going to do. The fourth thing they're going to do is they're going to be responsible for reporting and analytics to basically state to the legislature, to the governor, and to the leadership in the state, here's what's going on and here's what we need, here's how much it's going to cost, here's the plan basically for the state, a statewide broadband plan. And then the fifth thing is it's going to have a group of specialists that work in this office that will work with the mayor of Columbus to put together a plan to provide broadband to their community. So there'll be specialists that they don't have to have in their town. They don't have to go pay an attorney $500,000 to write a plan and to develop something. They're going to have this office that they'll be able to utilize those specialists to raise money through the USF fund, a local infrastructure tax, bring in a private company to do this if that's what they need to do to raise all the money to get it done. So those are the 5 critical things the office is going to do. And I firmly believe that that's going to move us even further down the lane. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, and to my fellow panelists. I didn't want to talk for so long, but as you can tell, this is one of my major swim lanes. So
that's why we wanted you here. Yeah, you know, the inside game. And so what happens with the Department of Information Technology then? How does that department, the office that you're talking about, how does that coincide with that?
So that's a great question, Madam Chair. So as it turns out, one of the biggest nuts to crack in my legislation is going to be, who does the director of this office report to? In some states have tried a version. Mine is much more comprehensive than those 5 things are a lot to do. Would you believe that right now we have one person that does this work for the state of New Mexico, and she's completely overrun. I feel bad for her for the job that she does. She's just trying her best, but she's like overrun on this thing. So I'm trying to figure out, do we have the role report to a governor? I just don't want it to be political is the thing. Or do we have the person and the office report to the Department of Information Technology secretary? I'm a fan of the secretary or the governor, but the problem is every time a governor comes and goes, all the pieces, much like CYFD, much like PED, all the pieces are going to be thrown up in the air, and then it's going to be hard to get any real traction because their focus, their direction will be changed. So I kind of want this to be an office in and of itself that exists beyond administrations, that has an oversight board that can hire and fire the director of this office. The reason for that is, let me just throw that out there, is if they're doing a great job in achieving their goals and the mission of what they're charged with, they should do their work until they retire. If they're not, we don't have to wait for a governor to come and go. We don't have to wait to make a change. I feel that way also about CYFD, by the way, but that's another topic for another day. Maybe, I don't know, after I've talked so long, you probably won't invite me back again, but I would love to come and talk to you about all the CYFD work I've done and how important it is.
Well, that's important work, for sure. And the work, as far as the access with education and broadband access with education and broadband access with our healthcare systems, I think that's a huge concern, and getting all of that to be able to be more streamlined. It seems like it's something we haven't been able to do yet. Adrienne, in your work, have you come across anything that may be a solution?
So, no, we have lots of ideas. I also, a couple of things more things that I want to just highlight in this process, right? I'm also on the board of a charter school, and in the work that we've done as Strong Families New Mexico to reach folks. Before, COVID, we were already working with folks that had low access to internet, even in Bernalillo County, that didn't necessarily have access to internet in their homes, that didn't necessarily have laptops. We did find, because that was a priority to us, how we reach people, right? We did do inventory of of our membership, of our thousands of folks across the state, an inventory of what do they have access to, and what we have learned, and I think is important to the Democrat Party and how we reach voters, how we engage and inform our communities in the civic engagement processes, is that, you know, cell phones is a thing that most people have. Smartphone, there's a critical mass of folks that do have, even if they don't have internet at home or don't have a laptop or computer, that they often at least have one person in the family that has a smartphone and that they can access information using that phone technology, you know, using phones. But another divide is that a lot of us, or a lot of programs that are meant to be accessible through the internet, don't consider making it mobile friendly. So like you can get on, but because the stuff is too much, or the compatibility for whatever reason, I'm not a computer technologist person, but right, that they can't actually function the use of their phone they can't use their phone to access those sites still, even if they have what is often limited internet access. I also had a good conversation, and I don't mean to throw it back to Senator Padilla. I wish I had more solutions as far as, I do think that, well, I want to say two things. I think that we are challenged as folks interested in engaging community, keeping our communities informed, living our Democrat values, to consistently talk about that, just as folks are saying on this panel, that it is a right, is a bloodline for our communities, and we don't move into the future without it. So creating the urgency around it, and how we, on the campaign trails, in our community town halls, lifting the voices and stories of real families experiencing that impact. I think we can't miss out on the opportunity, I would call COVID, because that it surfaced during this time. But I also did want to point to, I had a conversation when COVID first hit and CARES money was coming in, and I called Senator Michael Padilla and I was like, isn't there a way to, special sessions coming up, isn't this a way to make sure we're talking about broadband? And, you know, we did. I wonder if there's, and so was a possible opportunity using CARES funding. The more we do frame this as a human right, as a bloodline and essential need for our communities, the more we can say that it is justifiable to use things like CARES, the federal CARES funding, or other essential funding to create this access for our folks and families. And then I also think of, I had a friend, this is, you know, just the word around the world, but a friend who's a veteran, and she was telling me, you know, if they can deploy National Guards to go protect a federal statue, why can't we deploy the National Guard to dig the trenches that we need to have broadband internet access, or to get that, you know, the internet infrastructure that's needed across our state? So I'm just sort of, I don't know how viable those solutions or thoughts or ideas are, but throwing them out there.
Senator Padilla?
Can I just add one other little thing? Well, it's not actually not little, it's something that I'm working on too, that I forgot to mention earlier. Well, really three things very briefly. So we do have some regulatory hurdles that we need to look at for rural telecommunication carriers. Right now, we penalize the rural telcos so much greater than we do the larger telcos. And when I say telcos, I mean the telecommunications companies, and really they're broadband provider companies. They should just change their monikers now. That's really what they are. But so that's one thing. Another thing I want to mention to everybody, and I don't know if you're aware of this, and I don't know if we have any veterans on the call, but I don't know people if you know this or not. But would you believe that we have what's called black fiber under all of our, I don't know, Adrienne, if I've talked to you about this yet or not. It's a newer development that I've been working on. We have what's called black fiber under all of our railways here in New Mexico. When the railways were built, they were secretly also communication vehicles for the United States military. So they weren't just transporting oil and you know, coal and all the other things that they transport back in the day. They also have a communication component under them called black fiber. Black fiber is the equivalent of the highest astronomical broadband and most reliable broadband that you can ever get your hands on ever in anywhere in the planet, and probably 500 years after everyone on this call, you know, has gone on to a greater life or whatever. So I don't know how else to put it. So, but we use literally 0.1% of that broadband right now. So I have a special project I'm working on that that will allow us to, because that belongs to us, by the way. That doesn't belong to a company. That doesn't belong to a corporation of any kind. And I would like to see the broadband that slices right through Los Lunas, New Mexico, as an example, right through, you know, nearby Estancia, near some other areas of the world, I'm sorry, of the state, being able to tap into that to bring broadband into those communities. Because let's just say we don't have a train that goes through every town, right? But what we do have is all boats, you've heard the term, all boats rise together. So one project that I've been able to work on for you know, I'm very proud of, this is not a sexy topic, by the way. This is not like a big old political, yay, you know, but we were able to bring a gig of broadband speed to all of really Valencia County schools, because it was really, really woefully underserved for a really long time. And it's really outside of a metro area, and it's really inexcusable and this and that or whatever. The reason I mention that is because the moment that the school is brought up to a gig speed, really everybody in about 15 or so miles around it is brought up as well. Like I say, all boats rise together. So if we bring you to from 5 to 100, and you were at 1 when someone was at 5, then suddenly you're probably at 3 or 4. So everybody kind of rises together. So that's what we can do with this broadband or this black fiber. And so I'm working really hard to figure out now. If you don't hear from me anymore, then someone in the military came and took care of me or something. I don't know, but I'm gonna find a way to make that work for us, because I think that we could really see a lot of benefits from it.
Can I jump in for a minute, please? I love that we are going to have all these opportunities that are coming. My concern as an educator is, what do we do tomorrow? You know, what do I do for the kids that are just giving up and not attending anymore? Like Elizabeth said earlier, the F rate for 9th graders in West Mesa was 1,500 Fs in the first semester. This year, it's over 4,000 compared to last year. And we just have kids that are falling off the radar left and right, and we're losing them. And maybe one solution is going out and buying, 5,000 hotspots and delivering them to every home so they have access in their hand. But that's where I am just so worried about our kids. And I know the future is great to look forward to and have plans. But when I have so many kids that just are not logging on today, they're not doing their work, they're not able to do their work. And I know we always say kids are resilient, and they're beyond resilient. And the politicians are, us as educators, we're all in this because we love our community. We love our neighborhood, we love our families. But we need a more immediate solution too, without, just thinking ahead to what the ideal situation is. How are we going to get these kids in class tomorrow and doing their work so they don't completely give up and don't want to come back? Because APS, I know, is going to continue with the distance education next semester as well. And I know, so that's
one of the things, sorry. I just, can I jump in, Madam Chair, just real quick?
Please do, yeah.
I'll just be very brief. So one of the things that I did early on in the first, kind of wave of pandemic is I did go to Comcast. I went to a couple of these companies and I said, listen, you're going to have a really tough time with me, Buster, if you don't take free Wi-Fi hotspots all over the place. And I know that they didn't get everywhere, Shannon, but I will let you know that those things did happen in a really big way. And I've already let them know that I'm going to continue to beat that drum. So that's one thing. The other thing is we need to educate the community. I don't know how else to put it other than and I'm working really hard in my area to do it, but in my district, but to educate the community on the various options that they have. Because what I come to find out, and I know that this isn't going to make a teacher in a classroom and a social worker in a classroom, I'm very happy to hear this, but I'm personally shocked that some of these families that can have a $9.95, even though it's not what we want it to be, but they can have access to that, and they really need to get on it. I did travel a couple of weeks ago to Roswell to visit a company that is going to headquarter here in New Mexico. They're very close to launching, by the way. It was a risky proposition for me. I mean, I have some medical issues that I probably should not spend a whole lot, even though I spend 98% of my day in front of people lately during this pandemic. I'm trying not to, but I wear my mask. I wear it. But there's this new device that it's kind of like a hot air balloon, kind of like a blimp, like we used to see over the games and stuff, or the football games or whatever. If they were to launch, if this thing works, they can launch literally, and I know that you said, what's the here and now, but this actually could very rapidly light up the state. If this thing works, they can launch 6 of these at a certain elevation that we don't even see them, and they literally can provide the broadband speeds that we need. So I want to reassure you that I'm looking at Black Fiber. I'm looking at this Sky company that's doing this hot air balloon thing, or this helium balloon thing. I'm looking at just a number of ways to do this. But I hear you. We're not doing it fast enough. And I will tell you, I had a permanent fund, an endowment fund on broadband for the special session back in June. And this is, I think, what Adrienne was talking about earlier. Could not get a message on it. And I'm not going to get into the politics behind that, but I was incredibly disappointed that didn't happen, because we did have CARES money that could have helped us to create this permanent fund for broadband. So I'm going to bring it again, and let's see where it goes.
Adrienne?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and all the folks on this. And thank you, Shannon, for bringing it back to really the topic of this is our kids and how they're failing. I'm an organizer at heart. If folks on the call don't know me already, it's what I've been doing for most of my life. But I think this takes a multi-pronged approach, and I keep talking about how we as a community keep raising up the flag, keep shouting up the ladder that this is urgency, because everybody's in a sense of urgency now, and everything is important. But this is like water, right? In the fact that no longer can you get access to essential care without access to internet. But there as an organizer, and I hope I don't get backlash for this. I'm trying to learn how to be politically correct. But
Welcome to my world, Commissioner-elect. Welcome to my world.
I'm gonna have to learn, and hopefully I don't get backlash for this, right? But I think that parents, I think parents and students need to pressure our school systems, and if that means each student is a count for each school and is a dollar amount for that school. If the needs of that student aren't being met, pull the student out. And this is dangerous, right? Because for communities of color or single parent households like my own, if I pull my student, thankfully I don't have any student. I'm thankful that during COVID I don't have any kids in school right now. But if I did, right, and I pulled my kid out as a single parent, I would more likely be called to CYFD than I would to get the services that I possibly need. But if we do it as a critical mass, then PED, our education department, our schools have to meet the needs of the families and parents. And unfortunately, I want to say it again, that this comes off the backs of communities of color, low-income communities, where everybody's suffering now. But we see that, I'm sure of those difference in the new 1,000 number of students getting X compared to a year ago, that those are likely students that live in the edges of town, students that are communities of color, and students that are in for low-income communities. So yes, I want to prioritize all of it. That's within Bernalillo County. When we get to the state and we think about what kind of resources the state can distribute, if we then talked about priorities, of course, it's going to probably go towards rural communities. So what do we need to do locally? Within counties are getting money that they distribute, cities are getting money that they're supposed to distribute. Unless we say that CARES funding, I haven't even heard, like I said, I'm on a board for a school. I haven't heard that pressure. And maybe it's because everybody's under pressure to figure everything out right now. But I really feel like this is something that we should, really convene behind as a critical mass to save the pressure of, and being able to use those funding, being able to tap into resources. I don't know. Again, I might be also stepping beyond some lines here, but I would also ask Senator Michael Padilla. We've heard for years about the rainy day fund and the permanent education fund. I mean, why are we it's not the permanent fund, not permanent.
Land grant permanent fund, yeah.
Land grant fund. Like this, if we have not experienced a rainy day, I don't know what we are experiencing. So what are the opportunities? I don't actually know the opportunities to tap into that funding or to prioritize internet access in that funding, but I would love to explore those options and think about how we organize as a community, because there really isn't the resource there to make it happen. But when we push and pressure, I'm an organizer.
Well, and this is exactly why Elizabeth started this fundraiser that she's doing, Project to Connect, is we wanted to tap into the community and say, okay, we just need people to help pay for that $10 a month internet. Because my mom, who's living in her car with 6 kids, does not have $10 to pay to Comcast at all.
Yes.
So that's why she and I, she had the wonderful idea of saying, okay, let's tap into our community. Let's ask for help. Let's get these families connected. I think I heard a statistic today that there's 12,000 or 21,000 kids that have not enrolled yet. And that's statewide, not just in APS. But I mean, that's just terrifying that they're not in school. And I mean, I see it a lot with my kids that they're the ones home with the siblings because mom's off working. She has a job at Smith, so the 14-year-old's the babysitter. And he's trying to get his 3 younger kids online all day. So his schoolwork is not important at this point in time, when he has to get the little kids on. So yeah, no, I know it's a giant.
It's huge, and
huge.
there are so many things. Senator Padilla, I hear there's going to be a special session called before the January session. Is there any chance
It's
that
Tuesday.
It's Tuesday. Are you going to be able to present something to help our students possibly to have broadband access or some hotspots?
Well, we're going to receive, I believe, Madam Chair, that we're going to receive the call tomorrow. So this is the what is the swim lane that the governor is going to allow to be discussed or debated in this session? If there is the willingness of the governor to do that, then absolutely. I do believe that we're also in a situation, and this is going to be a tough one to swallow for a lot of people. The reason for the special session is because we're about to be required to return some monies. And I will jump up and down, set my own hair on fire if I have to, in front of people to not have to do that, because we have real need right now. And so I think that's what the focus of this session, the special, is going to be. It's going to be, I'm told we're going to try to do it in one day. We've already got some pretty good commitment from the Republicans that they're not going to go haywire, losing their minds and try to slow the thing down and embarrass the governor and all that kind of stuff. So that if the berth of the swim lane is large enough to do that, then absolutely, yes.
Thank you very much. So when you say return some money, some of the departments will have to return money back to the state coffers? Is that what?
No, to the CARES money to the federal government. And so that's why we're having to get together to make a few changes and tweaks to make sure that we have this money for the long haul rather than just the short.
Wow.
So, and I'm literally getting texts
For
about
us
the special
is-
session right now. So.
Yeah,
Well,
something for
speaking
us to
of-
really pay attention to. Manny?
Yeah, and speaking of pandemics and natural, disasters and trying to bridge the gap, we have a question from one of our viewers out there that wants to know, and if anybody can answer this, that would be awesome. During wildfires, hurricanes, or just times of high tourism, Verizon deploys cows, cell on wheels, colts, cell on light trucks, crows, cellular repeater on wheels, and goats. generators on a trailer to help boost cell and data signals to damaged or strange infrastructure. Could the state of New Mexico contract with Verizon or some other carrier to deliver high-speed internet to the areas that are in need of this short term? In the long term, it is a good idea that New Mexico should reach out to Starlink, which is specifically designed to bring internet to remote areas. And that is just like a side note to what the question is. So,
To answer the question, Mr. Vice Chairman, yes.
okay.
Yeah, I would just back that up. I think we need to be creative, right? And think about like there was some creative ideas around having a sort of helium, one of those blimps or whatever over certain areas that could provide internet access to that. I think these are great ideas. I think I've heard folks talk about things like solar corrals or solar gardens. We could think of internet as the same way, right? How do we, and Senator Michael Bebby was already sharing, right? Like if a school has internet access, it increases internet access for a large radius. Well, what's the formula for getting it in enough spaces that it's reaching enough of our folks?
Absolutely, and a follow-up to the same person that asked that question, Senator Padilla. Does Senator Padilla have a YouTube channel or a podcast? I would really like to hear more about these awesome ideas.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. No, I do not. I need a nap, actually, to be honest with you. So I know, I can certainly do that at some point, but no, I don't. And that's a great idea, and I appreciate the suggestion.
Thank you. I know, Shannon, you also work with children in To'Hajiilee, right? And that is, as we know, the infrastructure doesn't always support those, the Native American lands. And there's some, I know you were talking at one point about I think it was a coworker that was there, and they didn't have good internet access as well, right? So it's not just a matter of somebody being able to have the money to buy it. In some places, it's just not even available, right?
Right. That's what I was trying to make the point of before. Even here in town, you know, like at Barcelona Suites, you know, it's just the infrastructure's there, obviously, but the broadband, or I don't know what the technology term is, but it can't support the number of people that are on it. You know, one of the families at Barcelona Suites was saying their kids haven't been able to consistently log on for the last couple days. They keep getting booted off. They can't, their Chromebooks won't hold the Zoom meeting. I know in the South Valley, there's pockets where the schools have codes to give families, so they don't even have to pay the $10. But they're not in a Comcast area. I had a family that was right off 9 Mile Hill in an RV. They were kind of squatting in the desert. They're not in a Comcast area. So, and that's the same with To'Hajiilee, but I know they're working with other internet providers, you know, out there too. But it's not just a rural issue of having that connectivity. It's also just here in town.
So one other challenge that we're facing, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chairman and Shannon, is that, and I don't know of a polite way to say this, but that in addition to all of the students being online in the middle of the day where maybe they weren't before, is some of the students aren't online and they're playing Minecraft or some other, you know, heavy broadband required application. And so the reason I say that is, and again, how do you police that? How do you do that? How do you, you know, whatever? Because if all of a sudden what you just described, Shannon, the last couple of days, whereas before maybe they were able to get on to do their online class or whatever, and I'm not sure if that's what you said, but that's what I think I heard. Then suddenly someone is draining that node of the broadband capacity. That lane is getting clogged by something else that's going on there. So I highly recommend, if you are still in touch with that family or that group, to have them contact the whoever does provide the broadband for that area, and have them, they can do what's called a plug, and by pulling the plug, it's You know, it's just kind of an easy way to understand it. By pulling the plug, they get everybody off the whatever, and then they limit it to certain per user out there, and then that's one way to do it. So just one suggestion, sorry.
That's an interesting concept, you know, to kick everybody off and then bring them back on at a reasonable amount. What are some of the other agencies that are involved in getting broadband to areas, Senator Padilla?
Well, you have a mix of city, county, state, you know, governments. You have department by department. It is primarily the Department of Information Technology, the Economic Development Department within the state, and then you have the Public Education Department actually has a whole infrastructure group, and that's one of their focal points as well. And so that's why it's just, you have, the reason I think it's important to create this office that I was talking about, to kind of bring it back to that a little bit, is you have a ton of people are working on this, Madam Chair, left and right, but the efficiency just isn't there, from man hours to cost and the few dollars and pennies that we do have available to get this done, and then also to truly understanding where the gaps exist so we can go and fill them. So that's why this office that I'm talking about creating is actually going to really help in this area.
So they'd coordinate with all the different agencies then?
Right, that they would own the broadband plan for the state of New Mexico. And they would have inputs from all the various agencies and whatever. And then, you know, I thought that was a really great question right in the beginning around, you know, is there a map of broadband? I mean, you know, there are 17 maps that don't say the same thing. And that's why, you know, whenever the USDA is looking to invest monies in certain areas, it makes it very difficult for them if we don't even know what we don't know, you know, or we don't know, you know, where the gap exists. Because on one map, it might say, hey, you know, the East Mountains and east of Albuquerque are perfectly fine, versus another map that says they don't even have, you know, they have basic dial-up speed, which is actually true. I've seen literally that example that I'm giving you. But now you're going to have this one entity that's responsible for reporting out the exact, you know, red, yellow, and green, basically, on where things are and how they stand right now.
Right. Yeah, and that's a problem. What I was reading is how there's the backbone, which comes right through the metro area here, and then everything kind of feeds off of that. So as you get more and more users and internet service providers pulling off of that, it gets kind of diluted as far as the strength and capability. So
can I just answer? I'm sorry, I promise I'm not trying to talk too much here, but there was a great comment from Cheryl Harris in the chat window, and I'm so happy to hear from you, Cheryl. You and I, we certainly come in and out of each other's lives over the years, and I'm glad to see that you're there. And if you need anything, don't hesitate. You have my number. I want to help you in any way I can with anything. But I thought it was a great point. What role does the Public Regulation Commission play in this whole scenario? Well, when I was describing the three major pieces of legislation from 17 that I was able to pass that year, the third one I talked about, the rewrite of all of our telecommunications laws. I've made it no secret. I think we have our state treasurer on with us as well, Tim Eichenberg, who is a wonderful New Mexican, a kind and loving New Mexican. He will tell you, he's probably heard me say this, I am not shy at all by telling people what I think of the PRC. The Public Regulation Commission is the most dysfunctional family in the state of New Mexico. And let me tell you why I feel this way. So every single interaction, okay, take a deep breath. Let me take a deep breath. They always wonder why we're trying to reform them, because they need to go to reform school, actually. Okay, I'll stop. But every single interaction, every single time I've had to go to the PRC, it's been a cluster, it's been a mess, it's been awful. Let me give you one case in point. So the third bill that I talked about, remember how I said we hadn't rewritten our telecommunication law since before the internet came along? So we get this bill done, and this goes even back to when the state treasurer was in the state Senate, by the way. It was a 13-year effort. I had the bill for 3 years, and I finally got it over the finish line and got it done. I had to even change the name of the bill, kind of like a pass fake, you know, in football or in basketball or whatever. And so we get this thing done, and I give the public, so the Public Regulation Commission is charged with writing, promulgating or writing the rules around this particular massive piece of legislation. I was very proud of it. So I thought, I'm going to give them a 2-year runway to get this done. They took 1 year, 11 months, 30 days, and 59 minutes to get the thing done. First of all, boy, I was not happy. It is what it is. Okay. So then I thought, all right, they got it done. So then we come to find out they didn't include consumer groups. They didn't include corporations. They didn't include providers. They didn't include, it was almost as though they implemented the law in the complete opposite requirement of the law. And so this is what makes our work really hard up at Santa Fe, by the way. So then I went to the state auditor and I said, I would like for you to audit the process by which these rules were promulgated. That's item number 1. Then I went over to the state attorney general and I said to the attorney general, I want you to give me a legal opinion on whether these rules were implemented the way that they were supposed to. So, and they were not. And so as a result, we might wind up in another lawsuit with them, but it might be moot because we're reforming the PRC right now to an appointed body rather than an elected body. So I know that was a really long answer, Cheryl, to your question, but the PRC, if we, and by the way, I don't want to throw this all like the PRC are horrible human beings or anything. We don't staff them right. We don't give them the amount of professional staffing that they need. So it's partially the legislature's fault also. However, I don't see them showing up. Instead, they show up to oppose pieces of legislation that could be very helpful to the people of New Mexico, when in fact they should be showing up saying, we need staffing in order to be able to analyze these bills appropriately and be able to implement these laws appropriately. They are much more, the current body of the Public Regulation Commission are more like activists rather than regulators, and their job are to be regulators on behalf of consumers. And so they, so anyway, I'll stop talking now, but I'm not happy with the PRC right now.
Well, I think the amendment that we voted in this year will hopefully help to make it a little bit more of a functional family rather than a dysfunctional family. And Shannon, I'm wondering, with the families that you're talking about that are actually, like say at Barcelona Suites, or they can't even if they have $10 a month, they can't access internet. Is there another way that they can access? Are hotspots available for them that we could help?
There are, yeah. APS has set aside a number of hotspots for just our families. The problem is sometimes we can't issue them if the family is within the Comcast area. So let's say a family at Barcelona Suites, they can get the basic Wi-Fi for free that the hotel offers, but then they have to pay an upcharge every night, like $4 a night to jump up the internet to the next level. And for our families who are there because they've been evicted, they're paying a storage fee to have all their stuff in it. Mom isn't working, dad isn't working, unemployment was denied. We're having trouble accessing a lot of the CARES funds for our families too. $4 a day is impossible for someone to do. So yeah, I think we do definitely need to explore getting hotspots out to families that are extremely mobile. And we do that for families who are moving from place to place every couple weeks, every couple days, every couple months. We can bring them a hotspot, yes. And I think we should do some research and follow up on that and follow those kids and say, okay, is this really improving? But that it's just a huge task. I think I've taken out about 18, 19 hotspots, a lot out to Tahajali and a lot out to families just are outside the Comcast area. We're just seeing more at West Mesa that it's the families that are in town that are just struggling too with the basic $10 internet, because it's just, the quality is not enough. And I know we can't police people on video games and stuff, because that does happen. I mean, that's going to happen in the classroom. You're going to have kids who aren't paying attention who are sitting there. Just like at home, you're going to have kids who aren't paying attention and they're, playing Fortnite when they're supposed to be listening to their teacher. But I don't know, hotspots that's the only thing I can think of. I'm trying to think outside the box every day as to how to get kids reconnected and get them back online and just part of the school community again. So yeah, I'm open for ideas.
Yeah, and it is, as you had said, the haves, they have internet that's strong enough to let their kids play online, play games online, and still do their work, whereas, you know, the have-nots were, you know,
Mhm.
it's just a bigger and bigger divide that we're creating. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can come up with some solutions. Adrienne?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I saw in the question and answer, Susan Herring, or maybe it was in the chat, you know, directed a question to Shannon Trujillo, but really asking about the, an idea of having like fostering access. I think, you know, I know that we're looking to decision makers for solutions, definitely resources. I am willing to tap into whatever I think there's lots of, I've heard and learned over the last few months, right? That the county, each county commissioner has access to discretionary funds. I know that happens a lot in the legislature or different bodies where how are we, or now if our senator, if our governor is going to walk into a space where we're trying to make sure we utilize so that we don't lose funds. How do we bring a collective voice to that this is an important project so that maybe Senator Michael Badia's bills actually get a message, right? Because I've seen him push for a message at times and not get it because maybe, you know, Medicaid, all those things are at risk right now. But I like to just think of, right, that this is also a time that all this time is showing how much we need to be connected as communities. So thinking about block to block, fostering access. Yeah, I work from home now. That means my organization is paying for my internet access at home, at least part of it. So does that mean I can do a landscape of my neighbors block wide and see who I might be able to share or foster access with during the day? You know, connecting with folks in communities to I don't want to dismiss, we should not be policing people for doing that kind of, but where's the awareness efforts around like, hey, if your kids are online and we're playing things or watching movies in the middle of the day, where can we all give in a little bit? I just don't, you know, I definitely, especially as a new decision maker, want to use that, that seat to influence and provide resources for these very needs. But I also want us to remember, like, how do we connect to each other in a very personal way, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, community by community, so that we are actually saving ourselves in some sense or making best of the resources that we do have at hand.
Thank you very much for that, Adrienne. And we have just 1 minute left here. If we could go around in 30 seconds, give us your final thoughts here. Senator Padilla, would you like to start?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my Mr. Vice Chairman and Ivan and Elizabeth, and to my co-panelists, Commissioner-elect Barboa and Shannon. Thank you for the yeoman's work that you're doing. I really love and your passion in what you're doing. I really, really love it. Thank you so much. I thought there was a really good question, you know, what can we do as volunteers? We're all volunteers in this effort this evening, and what we do in our communities. I think it was Judith that asked that question in the chat window. I would pick up the phone if you do find that you have an hour, 5 hours, 40 hours, you know, 10 hours, whatever, or a couple of hours a week, and call your local school and find out how you might be able to get a hold of a phone list and call your community around that local elementary or mid-school or high school, and say, you know, hey, you know, I was participating in a conversation, and we come to find out that, you know, some of our kids aren't even participating in some of these, you know, our homes. Do you have broadband? You know, here's some resources that we are aware of. You may want to think about this. So just in closing, I would say, you know, let's extend this conversation of about, you know, I think the numbers in attendance were like, you know, 20 to 30, somewhere in there, 25, 28 or whatever. You know, if we each made, you know, 100 calls, now we're talking reaching 2,800 people. So I would highly recommend that maybe you do that. Consider doing that if you feel like you have some time at the house. I know that we are all drained of these calls and these online meetings and this and that, but it is our window to what's going on with our community, and so I highly recommend that. And I just want everyone to know on this call that I fully I fully expect to continue driving this particular issue. until it's solved for New Mexico, or as long as the voters in my area want me to keep working on this. Thank you again,
Thank you.
Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chairman, for having me today.
Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for all your work, Senator Padilla. We look forward to watching your YouTube channel as well when you get that up and going. Shannon, closing words?
I just want to thank you guys for having me today and for, letting me be the voice of these kids and these families that are just so vulnerable. And I love what I do, or I wouldn't be here. And I know everyone else does too. It's our home, it's our neighborhoods, it's, part of who we are. So I just want to thank you guys for all of your hard work. And thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for all you do, Shannon. Thank you for doing your job with care. It's amazing, really. Adrienne, bring us home.
Thank you again for having me on this great panel. I've loved hearing the ideas and the passion. I sort of said most of my closing in my last statement. I want to thank everybody for bringing this to light. Again, I think the most important thing is how we're thinking about connecting. I'm open to serve as in any way I can, and I definitely love creative ideas and energy. I think now is the time for it. And I want to remind and ask Ms. Serna to include again that link to the chat. I can commit $50 this evening to that fund, and I can commit to sharing it on my Facebook or social media pages, and ask everyone to donate what you can too. Those are immediate ways that we can provide access for some at least. So thank you, Ms. Serna, for bringing that, and thank you everyone for this time.
Thank you, Adrienne. Thank you for the work you do in Strong Families, and we look forward to seeing what you'll be doing on the County Commission as well. We're so fortunate to have you representing Bernalillo County. Thank you. And Manny, please give us your closing thoughts there.
I just want to say thank you so much to Shannon and for all the work you do in the resources program for the Albuquerque Public Schools Title I McKinney-Vento program that you've done since 1998 to show how much you care about the kids here in our local community. Thank you for working with the families that are experiencing homelessness by providing case management, educational support, and access to those community resources. Again, Shannon, thank you for being here. I'd also like to thank Adrienne serving as the Executive Director for Young Women United for 8 years, and for starting the Strong Families New Mexico incorporation with your program of Forward Together, where you currently serve as field director, doing the important work you do. Forward Together, we couldn't do it without you. It's a really good national nonprofit agency that has put down roots here in New Mexico, and it's leading the work that not only builds the rights, the recognition, and the resources for all families, but it also helps us to move forward. So thank you. We're looking to see you excel as a leader in District 3 as County Commissioner, and we really appreciate that you hit the ground running. And for Senator Michael Padilla, thank you for being a solid leader, not only for the state and for the people here, but also in your work for economic development, job creation, early childhood, child protective services, and science, technology, and telecommunications, just to name a few. Thank you for all your work that you do chairing the Science, Technology, and Telecommunications Committee. And thank you again for all your work, not only for closing the digital divide throughout New Mexico, but also for the extensive work that we all see you do in District 14 since 2013. We really appreciate it. And also I want to send a special thank you to Elizabeth for your presentation, to Flora, our chair, and also to Ivan. When underserved communities gain access to high-speed internet, all New Mexicans will benefit, whether they reside in remote rural communities, low-income urban neighborhoods, or anywhere throughout. It is New Mexico's interest to make sure that these disconnected communities are not only left in the slow lane, but they're also excelling so that they can keep up with the world. As Commissioner-elect Adriana Barboa stated, there's 70% of New Mexicans that do not have internet access. Internet is considered an essential, and as you know, it is difficult to learn to apply for a job, even if it's at McDonald's. and just to live in this day and age without the internet access, especially now during COVID-19. High-speed internet access has become vital to the success of individuals and communities across New Mexico, and in order to move forward, we need that access. Our nation's commitment to an equal economic opportunity, educational advancement, and democratic participation can only thrive if everyone has equivalent access to these critical communication networks. As important as it is to our state to ensure that access to what we think of as more traditional resources or services for all individuals and citizens of New Mexico, closing the digital divide in New Mexico strengthens the entire state both economically and socially. On behalf of the Democratic Party of Bernalillo County, we want to thank all of you for your attendance this evening. Please continue to wash your hands, practice social distancing, and stay home at all costs. And again, happy Thanksgiving, and thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you, Manny. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you.